Oh, it is good to be back. Drea, isn't it good to be back?
Where have you been?
Well, let me tell you. First of all, welcome to the Arkham Sessions. We are so happy to be sitting here right now. I am Brian Ward. With me, as always, the psychologist to the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains of Gotham City, Dr. Andrea Letamendi. Drea, how are you feeling?
It's great. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it is. I'm finally healthy. Then you're finally healthy, and then our big projects are sort of done or done-ish. So we can actually sit down in these chairs and talk about one of our all-time favorite shows again.
Aren't you going to say something?
I am going to say something. Those are some spiffy spectacles you have in your hands.
Aren't they lovely?
They are lovely.
They are comic book themed prescription glasses, and they have images of our favorite superhero on the sides of the frames. They are, of course, it's a very strong prescription. As you know, I think I'm legally blind.
Maybe.
But I couldn't be more happy to be wearing glasses. If you want to check them out, I realize you can't see them if you're listening to the podcast, but if you want to check them out, you can go to my Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc, or you can check out Sire's Crown. Their website is sireseyewear.com. They have all sorts of custom-made options for prescription glasses and sunglasses, and they specialize in doing comic book themed frames.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool because you can actually choose the images that you want to appear on your glasses, and they do them right there for you. So it's very cool. In fact, what we'll do is we'll make it easy for folks. Yeah, I know you've got some pictures up. We'll go ahead and put them here with the podcast, and
cool.
And a link to the folks that make them, and everything will be awesome. And maybe do you see a little something over here that is different?
I see that you're actually wearing clothes.
Yeah, I am, for the first time ever. These aren't so bad. No, I am wearing a T-shirt that one of our listeners, who has been a good friend of the show, Rev Sully. You remember him. We actually played one of his questions during our 1-year anniversary special where we were looking at Mask of the Phantasm. He sent us both T-shirts that have a very cool entering Arkham sign on it, and it is very cool. It is nice and comfy. I'm wearing it right now, and I'll be sure to give you yours after the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Rev Sully.
Yes, thank you very much. If you guys want to send us stuff, no, I'm just kidding. But you know what? No, we owe you guys a little something, and so we're going to give it to you, and it's called a show. So you know what, Drea? I say we get right into it.
I agree.
All right. So this week we're covering The Man Who Killed Batman.
And it wasn't Bruce or Bruce Wayne.
What? Spoiler alert. We haven't even covered the episode yet. Jeez.
I just, I'm thinking about the identities. I'm already getting into it.
Oh, yeah. You're getting real deep in there. Okay, that's fine. This one is actually written by Paul Dini, directed by Bruce Timm. So you know it's going to be a good one. It's actually a favorite episode of mine just because it plays a little bit with the idea of what would an episode be like if Batman weren't really in it. So this one starts out in a rainy night, and we've got a nervous gentleman running. He's running through the streets of Gotham, back in the alleyways and past everyone. And we see on a newspaper the headline, Batman Slain. Drea, automatically, I've got red flags. You and I have discussed my personal dislike of Batman's visibility in Gotham City, and how maybe it doesn't make for an effective hero.
Right, like his image, his persona is supposed to be so frightening, you believe, that there shouldn't be tchotchkes and dolls and keychains with the bat symbol, and certainly there shouldn't be news stories of him.
Yes, no one should be writing an article about how Batman could be dead. I mean, that, even if it is true, or if it's not true, the last thing you would think the reporters in Gotham City would want is the entire criminal pool to think that the one man that supposedly can stop them is no longer there.
Right.
So it would seem in the best interest of the Gotham readers to maybe not put a big headline on your front page about Batman having been slain. But it's giving us a little bit of information about this episode.
Right, and we also know that clearly he's not been slain. That well, you're right. I mean, we're starting to generate some ideas about, has he gone into hiding? Has he been injured? Has he had some identity crisis? Is he giving up? What other potential theories can be generated by this 2-word headline?
Yeah.
And I think this is a great way to start an episode.
It is a good way to start an episode. This gentleman runs to our old friend Rupert Thorne's house, and there we meet him formally.
I hear you've made quite a name for yourself on the streets, Sidney. What is it they're calling you? Oh, yes. The man who killed Batman.
Why is he known as the man who killed Batman? Well, he tells Rupert the story throughout the course of this episode. Basically, he wanted in on a drug run opportunity. He sort of wanted an opportunity to show that he too could be a criminal, but it turns out that he was fairly inept. And as a result, he was used as bait to attract and then distract Batman. So while the other guys were off doing their thing, they were going to let Sidney basically get pummeled. And he was exactly that. Batman ignores the three guys down below when he swings in and basically picks on Sidney, despite the fact that Batman actually looks down and sees the three guys walking in the alleyways and still decides to, grapple with Sidney. Help! He doesn't see Sid as any kind of real threat.
Right.
But he would rather threaten Sid than actually go after the three people that he can see down below. What's the deal with this, Drea?
I think he sees him as more of an innocent type of individual, someone who normally wouldn't be hanging out with this criminal crowd. And I think Batman is a good judge of character, and he may have immediately noticed that, oh, maybe I should pay attention to this person. Maybe there's more to this guy. And he tries to, it's not like Sidney is armed and Batman tries to disarm him. It's more about him trying to engage with him, much like you would do if you're a mental health professional and you see someone on a rooftop. You kind of start to, you don't walk away from that. Right. He starts to engage with him on top of this building. And what unfolds is a series of, for both Batman and Sidney, really unfortunate, clumsy little events where it looks like from the bottom, from the street view, it looks like Sidney is actually a good match
He's
for
putting
Batman.
up a fight. Well, before we get to that, though, do you think maybe it's that Batman sees is this a case of the animal kingdom where you see the weak one and you go after it, or you see the injured one and you go after it? Like, do you think it's that, yeah, I could go after these three guys, but Sid's the one who's going to give me what I want because look at him. He's totally going to give up all the information, and he's going to do it, because Sid basically wants to talk, but like you said, through a series of bumbling accidents, Batman finds himself sort of in a precarious situation.
I don't think, you're referring to an animal kingdom where the predator is looking for the weakest prey, right? And Batman isn't out to attack this guy. He's immediately, you notice that he's immediately trying to reach out to him to gather more information.
Okay. All right. I would think that it would be in Batman's best interest to go after the one that's likely to talk first versus in that
sense, if he's trying to when I said gather information, that means try to find out what Sid is doing there,
right?
And pull that information from him verbally. In no way does Batman at all enforce any kind of like physical violence on him or take him down. But as you said, there are these unfortunate kind of bumbling accidents, and they end up kind of tumbling around on the rooftop with Batman starting to believe that this guy is actually trying to fight him.
Back off.
And the next thing Batman knows, he's hanging from the side of the building and then falls just in time for a big explosion. And all the guys down below saw was Sid basically knock Batman off, and then suddenly a big explosion. Before he knows it, Sid is the man who killed Batman. And suddenly he's no longer a joke. They're no longer going to call him Sid the Squid like they teased that they would or offered that they would because he really wanted a nickname. Instead, he probably has the most powerful moniker in Gotham City, except this comes with a double-edged sword. Sidney basically walks away. Once again, we've got a criminal who has Batman's cape and cowl in hand, and he's got it like a trophy. And people then want to take out the man who took out the Batman. They're all toasting him at a criminal bar. And the next thing he knows, he finds himself in a position where bigger, badder guys want to take out the guy who took out Batman.
Suddenly I'm thinking, if I take down the guy who took down Batman, then I'll be the toughest guy in town.
Right, and because he actually didn't take him out deliberately, it's very frightening for him because these are real criminals. He's actually not really like them. He's not antisocial. He's not violent. He's not armed. He's actually quite innocent, but he revels in this new identity, and it gets him into trouble because, like you said, he's starting to get threatened.
So this brings us to an interesting moment where Harvey Bullock steps in and actually relays information to us that Jim Gordon isn't taking this news well.
Madre de Dios.
Hey, look, Renee, the commission's taking it pretty hard. Could you,
Sure.
We never see Jim in this episode. And I've got to think that was intentional, that maybe Jim is so distraught that he has sort of closed himself off from everyone, including us, the audience. What do you think?
I think it's a cool kind of moment that we don't see him, that we have to fill in the gap with our own interpretation of how he's handling the crisis and potentially what could be a huge loss for him.
Talk about that huge loss. What happens to a guy? We've talked a little bit about what would happen if Batman were to lose Gordon. Talk about the reverse. Talk about what happens if a guy like Gordon loses Batman.
I think that there are both professional and personal losses there. There's that initial, I think at some level, there's that initial worry that Gotham City has become incredibly dangerous with Batman gone, or potentially with him having been murdered. So I think there might be that initial, huge, tremendous worry that the city could fall. And immediately there's also that personal loss that, aside from this professional relationship they had and from the assurance that the city was safer with him around, that with Batman's murder, Commissioner Gordon lost a good friend. He lost someone who's in a way a companion.
He lost someone who was literally standing next to his bedside after he had been shot and injured just a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that they were very close, and at the end of that episode, we saw that Gordon sort of finds himself in a position where he aspires to be like Batman. He kind of wishes that if he were younger, he would be willing to be that vigilante. And we know Gordon. We know that Gordon is essentially that vigilante. He's the guy who's trying to turn the Gotham City Police Department around. And so without the cape and cowl, Gordon is a bit like Batman, and I think Batman is a bit like Gordon. But
right, and since you mentioned that, I'm almost wondering, the reason we don't see Commissioner Gordon is that he's. I like this comparison you're making, that they're very much one and the same. So maybe his absence in this episode is sort of really emphasizing that. With Batman being gone, Commissioner Gordon is a loss as well.
Are you suggesting that Commissioner Gordon might be Batman?
No. No, actually, you suggested that they were very similar and that Commissioner Gordon wanted to be just like Batman. Like in another world, he would want to be him.
But regardless, Jim isn't in this episode, and it is a very powerful scene where we see Montoya and Bullock.
This is why I love the Dini Tim episodes, because they managed to get so many characters into one episode with such a nice streamlined story.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Bullock, and you also mentioned Montoya, who Bullock calls upon to console the commissioner. And then guess who shows up?
Harleen Quinzel, legal counsel to Mr. Debris.
She's in a disguise and gets him out of prison. And of course, Harvey feels like he might recognize her.
Don't I know you from someplace?
And she has probably the best line of the episode, if not the best line of the entire series.
I think I served you a subpoena once. It was a small subpoena.
It is a good line, and it is a reminder that even though we fans know who Dr. Harleen Quinzel is, we have not been introduced to her in that role yet. So at the time of this airing, she is still just some woman who is she's got a disguise, but she's using her own name, which is interesting too.
It's great. And of course, when you see Harley, you know you're going to see
Mr. J.
Mr. J.
That's right. Well, and we do. It turns out, and this is what I really want to get into the meat of this episode, Drea, and I think you'll agree. The Joker is really upset about the loss of Batman.
Please allow me the honor of shaking hands with the man who did the impossible. The man who killed Batman.
And he wants confirmation, so he decides to pull a jewelry store heist, convinced that Batman will come in and break it up. And when Batman is a no-show, the Joker gets physically depressed.
Without Batman, crime has no punchline.
There's no point in taking the jewelry from the store if no one's going to try to stop us, which I find to be wildly fascinating and absolutely fantastic. It's a great bit of his character because it proves that the Joker isn't about riches, and he's not about the money or the jewelry. He's simply about the anarchy.
Yeah.
And this relationship that he has with Batman.
He essentially admits that without somebody to fight with, without someone to come after him, pulling these these criminal acts mean nothing to him. Mm-hmm. And so I agree with you. It's really not about obtaining the jewelry, and it's really not about even causing discomfort to the civilians of Gotham City, which we've seen him kind of enact some of that behavior. It's really about catching Batman's attention. And this brings us back to I think it's our second episode, Christmas with the Joker, where I immediately drew some kind of analysis, and I made this wholehearted commentary about their relationship. And I believe that this is consistent with that theory, that he wants to draw the Batman out so that he can engage with him. Yeah. And yes, that engagement is usually inappropriate and violent and sadistic and dangerous, but it leads the Joker to some connection to another person that he feels a connection to.
So let's refresh people's memories for those who haven't heard Christmas with the Joker for a while. What you're actually describing, you then suggested could be along the lines of borderline personality disorder, correct?
I did. I want to be careful because I certainly don't want to just rely on a label.
Sure.
But we did talk about about the Joker potentially having borderline personality disorder, in that he has real difficulty interacting with people in what we would consider an appropriate way. And he does yearn for attention and comfort and human connection, but he goes at it in a really self-destructive way.
Gotcha.
And in ways that are dangerous to other people as well. So we saw him in Christmas with the Joker. In that episode, he basically draws out both Batman and Robin on Christmas Eve by engaging in all of these really horrific, threatening acts.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, manages to be in the same room with Batman. And I think this is a very similar story where he goes out to try to lure Batman to him by engaging in some criminal act. And he's really, like you said, he's pretty saddened that Batman doesn't show up, because that to him confirms Batman isn't around anymore. He is very likely, he has been murdered by this Sid guy. And I even go back to that moment where the Joker meets Sid for the first time and says he wants to shake the hands of the man who killed Batman. And you would think that the Joker would be absolutely ecstatic.
And he's sort of playing it off like he is. Like he's very smiley.
But there's this real, it could be subtle, but there's this moment where there's this tone of regret in his voice. And again, Deanie and Tim do this really nice job of showing us that he's smiling on the outside, but he is not okay with what happened.
And it's also in Mark Hamill's voice. I mean, the work that he is doing in this episode especially is absolutely amazing, because he does play the Joker to be sadistic and a guy who legitimately wants to hurt the man who took the thing he loves away from him. Because he's not just in for whoever wants to come stop him. Like he probably doesn't care about the police. He doesn't care about Jim Gordon. It's the idea that Batman isn't there that is so upsetting to him.
And he explains the process. He explains the relationship.
There's a certain rhythm to these things. I cause trouble, he shows up. We have some laughs, and the game starts all over again.
Let's talk about that, because this goes back to what you were saying about inappropriately connecting to people, and there is a certain rhythm to their relationship. Let's talk about the fact that we now have to look at all of the previous episodes in a completely different light, with the exception of like maybe Christmas with the Joker, in that in all of these episodes, he seems to be out to hurt the citizens of Gotham. And in some cases, he's even been out to kill Batman, almost just going through the motions in order to lure Batman into his trap so that he could then kill Batman. And even in this episode, he talks about the fact that he is upset that Sid robbed him of the one thing he always wanted, which was to kill Batman. But it makes you wonder, does he really want that? And would he have been happy if he had been the one to do it? And you almost have to look at those previous episodes as, once again, Joker doing these wild things, hurting these people, just to get that attention that he seems to crave from Batman.
Well, and remember, we have talked about in the past his closeness to danger, and that means his willingness not to put just other people in danger, but to put himself in danger. And I think that's certainly that comes up in this episode as well, in the sense that we're reminded of his tendency toward those high-risk behaviors because he gets the rush, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just being close to Batman. Like, remember, it's not just hanging out with Batman.
Yeah.
He's very specific. He shows up, we have some laughs. We have some laughs means we get into trouble. I risk his life, he risks my life, I get hurt, he gets hurt, I almost die, he almost dies. Yeah. It's so much fun.
Yeah, because Batman, let's not make any mistake, Batman, not laughing. He's never laughing.
Well, and you know what I would say is that while Batman doesn't find it necessarily funny, he's all about that rush as well.
I agree.
He needs that. So the two of them, and there's almost this just that line that the Joker says about having some laughs together is admitting something that's very true, that both of them get some reward from their interaction. And by Batman being no longer around, the fact that, he could be murdered, he could have been murdered, there's this immense sadness for the Joker, that this could mean he doesn't get that feeling anymore. This is a huge loss for him.
So let's talk about what we know about Batman up to this point, because I know we could go a little further into this when it comes to the comics, especially the recent comics. But let's talk about the animated series. Do you think Batman would share this sentiment if he found out that the Joker had been murdered?
I don't think he would share this sentiment to that degree. He wouldn't be as upset.
But you don't think he would be like...
I think he would be confused, as if it's something that you've brought up in the past. Like, what does Batman do when there's no threat to the city? Now, of course, there are other supervillains to be worried about, but this one is particularly... he's usually the cause of really, really troubling, tremendous types of threats to the city. So I think that Batman would be confused, certainly relieved that he can take a breath, but confused because where is he going to get that rush? Where is he going to get the feeling of engaging in high risk behavior? And as we talked about before, overcoming the Joker is such a big rush.
Yeah. And no other villain in Gotham is going to try to kill Batman whilst on a roller coaster. So he's going to miss that rush as well. It's unfortunate.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is that as the Joker's recognizing the reality of the situation, he has this huge mood swing. He goes from being kind of his joking self, certainly sadistic and scary joking self, and he kind of gets serious with Harley and knocks her down.
Put them back, Harley.
Oh, Mr. J, you're such a kidder. You never could...
I said put them back!
Sure, boss, I can do that. This is me putting them back, no problema.
Yeah, she wants to take the jewels. She doesn't understand the concept of robbing the jewelry store and not taking the jewels. And he does. This is the first time that we really see him get violent with her. And
No question about it. He yells at her and knocks her down with the loot. And I'm gonna have to admit it is a little bit jarring watching that as an adult.
Yeah, because as a kid you're like, ugh, he's serious now, but as an adult you really realize the impact of that moment. The Joker actually ends up having a memorial service for Batman, where he gives what I find to be an absolutely amazing eulogy.
Dear friends, today is the day the clown cried. And he cries not for the passing of one man, but for the death of a dream. The dream that he would someday taste the ultimate victory over his hated enemy. For it was the Batman who made me the happy soul I am today.
And he goes on to explain that his dream was to be the one to kill off Batman. But again, one has to question if that would have been satisfying to him, no matter how he did it. And the Joker wants to now kill Sidney.
Yeah, again, he goes from one mood to the next. I bring this up because I'm careful, to point out symptomatology, and this is troubling to me to see mood swings or, moving very swiftly from one type of mood to another type of mood. In this case, from a somewhat calm, forthcoming mood to a very volatile, dangerous, and vicious mood. And we realize he's about to murder Sid. Yeah, and in fact, he actually ends up putting him in the coffin that they have there and throwing it into a vat of acid. Now, at this moment, Harley decides playing Amazing Grace on a kazoo. I'm sorry, did anyone else get the Star Trek II vibe off of this? The Spock's memorial at the end of Star Trek II, where they're playing Amazing Grace on the bagpipes as he gets shot off into space. Now, this to me was almost a clear reference, but it very well may not have been. I don't know. I just wondered if you... I didn't pick that up, but now that you say it, it could totally be.
Well, that was fun. Who's for Chinese?
Is this the mood swings you're talking about?
It is. It's a number of things. I mean, of course, he loves a punchline, and what a great punchline! I've just murdered this guy, the guy who killed Batman, and he's gotten that rush. And I almost want to say it's also demonstrating that he cares very little for human life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is a part of this is a very sad characteristic of the Joker that, we talked about him actually wanting Batman to be alive, but truthfully, he is very interested in death and murder, and he has no problem killing Sid and moving on and having Chinese food right afterwards.
Right. Well, Sidney finds himself in this box. The acid is about to come through. Sidney's a goner, except that he then emerges from the box and he's out in the daylight, and he seems to be out in the Gotham reservoir of some kind. Somehow or another he's been saved. He thinks that maybe it was through some sort of pipe or some bit there in the vat that actually he was ejected from the vat and now he's saved. Except we think that there had to have been something bigger than that. But that brings us back to present day. Thorne is still listening to Sidney's story, and he believes that Sidney has been playing dumb this entire time.
You think I didn't hear the rumors of the third-rate stumblebum who rubbed out the Batman? And now you say you accidentally made a fool of the Joker? No one's that lucky or stupid.
And he believes that Sidney is out to get a shot at Thorne's business, and he ain't having it. So he then says that he's going to kill Batman. That's when Batman emerges, ready to save the day and re-announce himself to Gotham City. He takes on Thorne, and he ends up saving Sid's life.
It's a fantastic entrance because up till now we've not seen him, and we know he's got to be alive, but we have no evidence for that. And it's just a great way to, what he says during the scene is a great way to end the episode.
That's for pulling a gun. And that's for the drugs. And that one's for any I missed.
He still has to lock up Sid, though, because, Sid was engaged in a criminal activity. The attempted murder of the Batman for sure gets him put into prison. But here, he actually lets Sid know that this might be a good thing for him, because the one thing Sid has wanted this entire episode is to be somebody, to be a big shot. That is, until he was one, when then everyone wanted to take him on, but he still wanted to be someone relevant. And in prison, being known as the man who nearly killed Batman, that puts you right up there in the top tier, along with all the folks around the table of almost got him. Sid the Squid now has his own almost got him story.
Yeah.
So he is almost as much a mastermind as anyone, except that we know that he's just a bumbling idiot who, made some very lucky moves and put Batman in a weird place.
Well, in a way, I almost am okay. Are you okay with this ending? I sort of feel like, yeah, Sid got caught up with these criminals, and there's the bully victim in me that kind of roots for Sid, because clearly in the beginning of the episode he's being taken advantage of, and we wonder whether his life is in danger if he doesn't do what these criminals tell him to do.
Right.
He's definitely the underdog, and in a way, for him to rise up the ranks and get that attention is kind of, it settles well with me.
Right.
Even though I know he doesn't really deserve that. He didn't really do anything.
Right.
I don't know, how do you feel about that particular ending.
I like the ending. I think it's pretty great because he's no longer at the top, so he doesn't have to fear people trying to climb that mountain, but he still has enough cachet that he's somebody of note in prison, and for him that's good enough, and I think for me that's good enough. But the thing that I find myself wondering, and it's something you just brought up, that sort of bully mentality, I find myself wondering what brought Sid to the life of crime anyway. You know, and we've actually seen this with other villains in the past as well. Those people who were mistreated and maybe found themselves going toward that life of crime. But a guy like Sid doesn't strike me as the type of guy who wants to be a mobster. So I find myself really wanting to know a little bit more about his backstory and what got him there.
Right. I do too. And I think part of me understands that he's a guy with very low self-esteem, and that may have driven him to end up, in a bad crowd, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what doesn't settle with me is the idea that the feeling of accomplishment will stay with him. And that's because of what we actually know about the relationship between accomplishments and self-esteem, that unfortunately self-esteem is actually related to accomplishments that we've done. I know this sounds simple, but he hasn't actually done much. He hasn't done anything, right? He's believed to have nearly caught the Batman, but in reality, he knows that he's not done this. And research shows that self-esteem doesn't increase simply with praise. And this is actually in the current or younger generations, this is one of the kind of fallacies that is really hard for psychologists to really come up against and disprove, because so many youngsters, teenagers, young adults have been raised in this kind of like, just the, what is it called? The award for just participating.
Yeah.
We're kind of rewarding people, especially some of the younger generations, for just showing up. And people have even pointed out that there has been this trend in our culture to praise and reward people just for showing up, literally just for showing up to work, literally just for showing up to school, showing up to the game, participating in the game, versus a culture of first place, second place, third place, actually winning.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm certainly not communicating any theories that we should only praise winners.
Sure.
But because that has been, because the trend has sort of swung, the pendulum has swung the other way, we're now dealing with a lot of young adults who haven't gotten the praise for their accomplishments, which is really what they should be getting it for. And so the field has been very cautious in their efforts to discuss research around rewards and recognition, because those are always great things to improve behavior, increase wanted behavior, and of course to decrease unwanted behavior or maladaptive behavior. So the rewards and recognition area of research is huge, but the problem is that people are starting to reward inaction, or, like I said, just showing up. While in fact, the best way to improve self-esteem is through opportunities to perform. So that means actually being able to accomplish something, overcoming something, winning something, scoring well, a game, sports, anything that involves some kind of competition, so that somebody can have that internal processing that it's because of something I did that I got that praise, or I got that reward, or award. I got an actual award for something.
Right.
So that's kind of the direction that the field is going in, that we really need to pay attention to what's being rewarded. So I kind of worry about the duration of Sid's, his self-esteem. I put that in quotations, like whether this is really self-esteem or a short-lived feeling of grandiosity.
Right.
And I'm apt to believe it's not going to last.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's something that that can last. But we will certainly see. By the way, I will say that one of my favorite things about this episode is the fact that Sid is voiced by Matt Frewer, who a lot of people would know as Max Headroom, a TV series that I produced on DVD.
Wow.
And, he was an 80s icon, and I'm glad that he played such a nice performance of Sid in this episode. So well done, Matt Frewer.
Those are two very different characters.
They are very different characters. Max, all about the ego. Sid, all about the wanting to have enough of a personality to have an ego that big, I guess. But I love Matt Frewer. He's fantastic, and so it's something I wanted to comment on before we moved on to the next episode, which will be Mudslide. Guess who we're going to face in this one?
One of my favorites.
Quite possibly.
It has to be Clayface.
Okay, then it is. It's one of your favorites. That's coming up next week. As always, if you want to reach out to us, you can do so by following us on Twitter and tweeting to us we are at Arkham Sessions.
Oh, don't tweet into us. Just tweet to us.
I said at us.
Oh, I thought you said tweet into us.
No, I did say tweet at us at Arkham Sessions. You can also email us. We are arkhamsessions@gmail.com. Drea, where can folks find you?
They can tweet at me or to me.
Okay.
At Arkham Asylum Doc. They can also find my website, underthemaskonline.com, where I will post pictures of my new bat glasses.
That's right. And then you can also find me on Twitter. I am at bward028. Until next week with Mudslide, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And we are
The Arkham Sessions.